welcome back. This is week 4, day 1. This is our last week of the Launch Your Internet Business class. Once you get past this week, we'll talk about where you can go from here. Hopefully now you're into your 22nd day and you have formed a nice little habit of spending 15 to 30 minutes a day on your site and building your business. We're going to continue working on that this week, get a little deeper into some of the tools that you can use. In particular, we are going to really focus on the things that are out there to help you get this job done. We've got a whole lot of different things that we're working on. We're blogging, we've got advertising, we're advertising that we're selling, plus that we're essentially buying. We're trying to be search engine friendly. So we've got a whole lot of work ahead of us, and we're going to go ahead and look at some tools to help us with those this time around. Now, in looking at this, first thing you may have seen if you're looking at the screen here is that we're going to look at a thing called Screaming Frog. I know that's not the most, that is definitely a unique and original name, but trust me, it's a pretty cool tool. The nice thing is, of course, with it being such a unique name, if you Google Screaming Frog, it's going to be one of the first things that shows up. I'll go ahead and go to the home page here. And what you do is you've got, there's some pricing, so you can do a paid version of it, but you can also just download it. And it's going to figure out what operating system you're running on. It's going to let you download it. It will take you a second or two, so you can go ahead and save it. That's probably a newer version than what I had. So I'm going to go ahead and install it. Like most things, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to replace the one I had. And now I'm going to assume that it's still there so I can launch it. Let me kill that while I'm waiting. There we go. I'm going to kill that. And I'm going to go back to Screaming Frog. And let me open this screen up a little. Oh, I guess I can't yet. So I'm going to accept the EULA because I have to. And now this is actually really easy to use. The free version has got some limits. What you'll see here is you can go in, you can buy a license. I think it's still limited to essentially 500 pages. But all you need to do if you want to look at it is, let's say I go to, I think I can do this. And there's not a whole lot to that, so let's try one that's got a little bit more to it. So that you can see something that's going to actually it helps to spell it right. There we go. Okay, so what you're going to see here is it's actually spidering its way through the site. You can see over here, and let's just go ahead and maximize that puppy. Whoop, I don't want to go that maximized. Let's go, I want to go full screen. So what you see down here is it's counting its way up. If you can see down at the bottom, and how many pages it's got left. It's actually going through its spidering as far as building a list, and then as it's building that list, it's slowly parsing its way through stuff. Now what you'll see is over here on the left, you got the address of every page that's out there. And actually we're going to, look at, okay, now that we're parsing this thing and it's building some information, you'll see here it's got what kind of content is it. It's got status codes, titles, meta descriptions, keywords, H1s, H2s, gets into a whole bunch of different information. So we'll sort of walk our way through this. The first thing, and it's not quite complete, but we'll just go ahead and give it a second here. It shows here it's about 64% done. So we're going to actually do some sorting, but let's look. We'll start at the back end here while waiting on this. And there you go. So it's limited to crawling 500 URLs. it's just going to stop at that point. So, that's where it's gotten to that point. So it'll stop there and it'll just crawl up to the 500 URLs. Now, most of you, as you're starting stuff off, and particularly if you've got a site that's not if it's not like a blog site where you're putting stuff out, more than once a week, you should easily be able to keep it under this limit for a while. So early on, you can use it free. You can always come back later and pay for it. It depends on what you want. But we also have some other applications that we're going to look at that can offer you some of the same kinds of things. This one's just a nice graphical one. It walks you through here over on the right. You can see it's basically going through different types of files. It's telling you, these are file extensions. Here's some of the content in it. Is it HTTPS or HTTP or both? There's some response codes that you're going to get there, URIs, page titles. So it's things like, am I missing a page title? Is my title over 65 characters? Is it below 30 characters? Is it over 568 pixels in width or below 200? Is the title the same as the H1? Things like that. These are all things that help you from a search engine optimization point of view. Now, the most important thing is, now that we're done, I've vamped long enough, is you want to go look through here. Oh, I've got it. Do I have it sorted by? There we go. Okay. You want to look at your status codes, because I want to see, is there anything that's not basically a 200? And I'm going to see here, which is fine. I've got a couple that have moved permanently. They're just redirects, and that's okay. And then, of course, I've got the primary site. If you have like a 401, a 404, or a 500, or something like that, if you've got broken pages or things that it can't get to, you want to take a look at that, because that may point to an issue. The next thing you want to do is you're going to look at titles. So you'll see here a lot of these that don't have titles or images, and I can actually go across tabs up here as well. I'm sorry, I can filter. So I could say, I could remove the images. So I can say, well, let's say I want to do only HTML. Well, now you see I do pretty good on my titles. Just about everything has a title except for a couple that'll move permanently. That's fine. My title length, I can sort by that, and I'm right clicking to do it instead of left clicking. That's why it's a little confusing. But you can see here, if you look at your titles, where I had that, below 30 or over 65. Well, I can see down here, here's some that, are here's my title 1 length. So basically about here and up would be stuff that maybe I want to expand on it. And if I jump towards the bottom, then 60 there, you can see here's some that are, that are longer than that. And now, since these are basically, we can see here I've got an episode thing starting it. Those are all podcast ones, so maybe I'm not as concerned about that. Meta descriptions, you can see here that I'm missing some. And you definitely would want to have that. That's going to help people find your site, find your article. So I've got some there that I would need to do some work. Keywords. Notice here that I don't think I have any meta keywords set up, which is, can be a problem. Those are going to help with searches as well if you had some good meta keywords to anything. Your H1s you're going to want to have, again, you can see if there's any missing H1s and it's got their length, and if there's any H12s out there, H2s out there. And so you can see here, I usually have an H1 and an H2, which is good. If you have any robot configuration stuff, you don't really have to worry about that too much. You're going to see your your link. Now, more importantly, what you're going to look at maybe here is make sure your word count is, decent. You may want to look at your ratio of text to, white space. May or may not matter to you depending on what your content is. Most importantly, here's one you're going to look at is your response time. You want your response times, ideally everything is 2 seconds or better. So anything that is over 2, these guys, I would want to look at them. 2.01, even probably if I go down to about 1.75 or worse, those are things that I may want to improve. So if I go look here, I don't see with my titles necessarily anything weird, but now if I come back, so here's my response times. But if I look, I will probably see with my size. Whoop, didn't want to do that. Here we go, my size. As we can see, some of those are getting maybe larger than they need to be. Oh, they're not too bad. If I go here, you can see that most of them are 20 to up to about 30 something K. But I've got a few that get 40K or more, and you're probably going to find in those cases. You can see I'm starting to get mostly the larger response times there. In particular, now I remember I had these filtered for just HTML. If I open those up to images, then I'm definitely going to want to look over here at size, because I don't want, right click it. When I come down here, I don't want anything very big, which I've done pretty good. I don't have anything that's 100K or more, which is really the limit. And let's see if my response times get any worse there. Not really, because the ones that I've got, it looks like all of those that were the bigger things are, they're probably off on a CDN, content delivery network, which allows me to get those things done a little faster. So you can see the larger files are actually, and let's see, what are those? Those are, these are all things that have been uploaded and compressed and some good stuff like that. So even when I have my images, the worst I get is about 3 seconds, which is not bad. Now, if you go to a different site, you may get something very not good. And this has been built with that consideration. If you go back to something that has not been maybe as much, let's see if this one will give me some bad stuff. If I go look here, what we may see is some larger. So he's almost done. This is a smaller site. Now I have done some cleanup, so this may not be as bad as I feared. Yeah, so here's up to, that's 300K. So I've got some rather largish like images and sizes there. If you look at your response time, now this again is on a content, CDN. This is on Cloudflare, which we'll talk about at another point. So here, actually we did a pretty good job. The worst, there's only one that's 2 seconds or more. So actually our response times are pretty good. This one's been cleaned up actually better than I thought. Now you can walk through, you can see any specific pieces. You can do your meta descriptions. You can look at your keywords, your H1s. Basically, it'll filter all this stuff down by going across the top. And of course, you can filter your, if you go back to internal and external. So here's your external stuff in case you're having to link out to somebody else. You may find some issues there. You may want to not link out to them as much. And of course, you're focused on your internal stuff, and you may want to come here and filter for specific files. So let's say, do I have any? Yep, see, so I've got some PDF files, and I may want to jump all the way over here to look at size and see. So I don't have anything huge there. It looks like I've actually got some duplicates, which I do. Because it's looking at HTTPS versus HTTP. It's actually picking up both of those. So, you can play around with this. So if I just do it HTTPS, I can see what's coming out. You can link those kind of things. You can see some nice graphs over here. But more importantly, what I would do is, start walking down the right here, look at some of the information here, because these little things it's looking for, directives. I would walk through those, understand what those are, see if those are things that you want to have or that you don't want to have, particularly with respect to Google. Now, Screaming Frog, awesome, nice little thing. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you at least one other here. And this one's called GTmetrix. This one's pretty easy. This one, much like Google Site Speed, I think it's pingdom.com, and there's a whole bunch of other sites out there. Basically, look at like Google site speed analyzers. And what did I do for? I did this one, so I do this. These. Now that gave you very detailed. Screaming Frog gives you a very detailed thing. It shows you file by file. These overall site indicators are going to give you essentially they typically give you a score, A through F, as far as how do you rate, as far as matching the Google standards for a proper site, for speed. And it's really Google, but it's usually called internet standards, but let's face it, Google pretty much owns those. So if you end up, and they'll do it in a percentage. So if you say, if your site comes back 98%, that does not mean you're in the top 2% of sites. That means that you hit 98% of the things that they're grading you against. Now, these actually give you a lot of useful information. So they're going to tell you here, this is generally speaking, this is on an average. Actually, this one, I'm sorry, is hitting my home page. And that's thing is that these are not typically crawlers. They're more like looking at a specific page and look at some ways you can help yourself. But they are usually things that, particularly for a blog site or something like that, they're going to be, once you fix one page, hopefully you're fixing that for the whole site. And we can see here it took 17 seconds to get the page loaded because there's a bunch of images. My page speed score is an A. My Y slow is an 87. It's a B. Now, more importantly, let's look down here. Page speed, they got this 90%, and this is what the grades were. Now, the hundreds you can pretty much ignore, but the C, avoid landing page redirects. Well, you can come in here, and it's going to say that I had some redirects here, which you're going to get. So if I went directly to one of these sites, I'm not going to run into the same. I'm going to get a little bit better score. And that may or may not be an issue, but you definitely are going to have things like scaled images. You may want to make sure that here it was resized from 512 to 100 by 100. Well, you may want to change this image to that size. Your minimum request size is that some of these have got some really big, nasty URLs. I'm not sure how I got to those, but importantly, I can say, what does this mean? And it's going to say, well, this is what's going, this is basically why we're doing it. And if you do read more, it's going to tell you some details from Google. And it may even get you, down here, you may have some recommendations that work, that help you through it. For example, leverage browser caching. If I go to what this means and read more, this one, I think, will actually tell you, how to leverage browser. So how to do it. A lot of these will give you some very good recommendations, how to fix them. So the first time you come through, which is what I ran through here, you'll find some things like this. Oh, I got an F. Well, here's some things that I need to fix. So what does this mean? I'm going to read more, and it's going to say how to add it, how to do it, how to address it. That may not be perfect. It may not give you exactly what you need, but then again, it might. And I have done that over time, so that I've improved my sites quite a bit. I think this one, for example, was like C's and D's or maybe D's and F's initially, and brought it up quite a bit. And then once I make some changes, I can retest it. I can actually, GTmetrix will allow you to sign up for free, and I think it'll give you 10 sites that you can keep in your, you can regularly go back to, and you can look at them over time. So you can see, how did your changes make a good impact without you having to take notes with it? So there's two tools to help you with the search engine optimization side of your site. It may seem very scary and technical, but it's actually not that bad, particularly in the WordPress world, because you may have some of these things where you may say, for example, Minify CSS. You may say, I don't understand any of that. Well, if you go in there and type, go search Google thing, how do I minify CSS in WordPress? You're going to get some plugins that'll show up. They'll say, hey, here's a couple plugins. Here's some things you can do. So these are actually, they may seem scary, but it is very easy to get yourself from, your initial score probably is not going to be terribly good depending on what you've got on your site, particularly if you've got a few posts and some images. but it's not going to be too hard to get that back up into your A's and B ranges, which is where you really want to be, because that tells that's where that Google thinks you're a compliance site with the good things in the world of internet. Why slow? As I think I may have noticed or pointed over there, it has different stuff it's checking. Waterfall is going to show you what did it do. This is basically walking through all the things it loaded as it got its way through to the page. And then you can log in and you get some additional information about timings. You can get a video so you can see what it looks like as far as like to a user. What did the site see as it was loading stuff up? And you can get some historical graphs as well, as far as how well have you made changes to this thing over time. So went a little long. Apologize for that, but this is it's just one of those topics that is a pretty darn good one to cover, and worth it for you to spend a little time with it and learn how to make your site better. That'll do it for today. We will come back tomorrow, well on our way through this thing, plugging our way through week 4. Until then, have yourself a good one.